Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to do power rankings as we head into mid-January's games. And Blake, we always start at the bottom, and that bottom team has been the same one for a bit. It's the South Carolina Gamecocks, who are 0-2 in the SEC rankings nationally. 216 in Kim Palm, 274 in Bart Torvik, 194 in Jeff Sagarin, 248 in BPI, and 264 in the net. Now, look, we don't always agree with the computers, but in this case, the computers have got the Gamecocks way behind the rest of the league. Now, Carolina didn't look way behind the rest of the league. When I saw the Gamecocks in Nashville last week, they took Vandy to overtime before falling, but still, I don't think you can go anywhere else but Carolina at 14 at this point. Also, the only team in the league with a losing record overall at 7-8.
Yep.
Next up.
I mean, what else you mean to say? I say the same thing every week with South Carolina. Like,
right.
I'm sorry. I don't have a lot to add on them. They play Kentucky on Tuesday. They could maybe get a win at home against A&M or Ole Miss the following week. That's about all I got.
I was giving you a pass when I went to next up, but
just saying.
We'll take it now. Yeah, okay. Tied at 12, and we got a few ties. Ole Miss and Vanderbilt. You had Ole Miss ahead, or excuse me, you had Vanderbilt ahead of Ole Miss.
Yeah.
I did not. I debated that. Ole Miss has got a top 50 Ken Palm win against Florida Atlantic. Vanderbilt doesn't have any of those.
A long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. Both teams have also had fairly recent, within the last month, horrible losses. Vanderbilt to Grambling, Ole Miss to Florida Atlantic. Vanderbilt's got to win in the SEC, but that was home against South Carolina. As I'm doing this, I'm like, why are we even wasting our time debating this? Neither team is very good right now. Vandy's probably better offensively, Ole Miss better defensively. And two teams that, frankly, if I had to guess right now, you could see different coaches for each next year.
Yeah. I mean, I don't – like I said, that Florida Atlantic win was a long time ago for Ole Miss. November 11th, game 2. They've lost to North Alabama since then, and like we've talked about a lot offensively, they just don't have it right now, and that's just the problem because we know Kermit's kind of prides himself on defense, and because your offense is as inefficient as theirs is, it can really put the pressure on you defensively. And I think that's what they're running into in a lot of these games, and yeah, so that's been an issue. But I put Vanderbilt ahead just because of what we talked about. I mean, we can say what we want about Vanderbilt, but they've been right there in in pretty much every game they played in this season, and I think there is something to that. Now, yes, they've lost some head scratchers, to a Grambling. Southern Miss one, not as much of a head scratcher as people thought it was. So I don't know. I'm not saying that Vanderbilt is a bubble team or anything, but I think they're better than people are giving them credit for a little bit. But yes, I can understand rotations and such can maybe be a bit of a sticking point right now. But I think you got to give them a little credit for the fact that they did go in and nearly win at Missouri. And yeah, I mean, got to win over a Pittsburgh team that playing pretty well right now as well. So
pretty good.
Yeah, so I think Vanderbilt probably deserves to be ahead right now, given the overall resume. So.
No, I think the more I listen to you talk, you're probably right about it. But neither fan base very happy with the season in either case. Now, if you're up to the computers, this team would not be at 11. It would be more like 7 or 8. In fact, I'll tell you exactly where it would be. It would be at 8. But we're not computers. We're guys that watch ball, and we've noted much of the year that Florida just hasn't done much against any good teams. Florida did get a nice win over Georgia, but not enough to vault the Gators past 11 in our rankings this week.
Yeah, this is where the chaos begins, because if you can properly tell me...
Good luck to you.
Beyond the head-to-head, remember, we're taking the whole deal into account here. We're not just taking the most recent head-to-head games into account. If you can tell me how to properly split up where teams like Mississippi State, Georgia, Florida, A&M, LSU, if you can tell me the proper order for all these teams that aren't just based on head-to-head standings and
And you
more,
might even throw Kentucky in there too.
well, yes, you may throw Kentucky in there as well.
That's 6 teams.
Through a 15-game sample size, then I'm all ears because I don't have a great scientific formula for you for about the next 5-6 teams. And you know, putting Florida here, I told you in the recap video, really liked the way Florida played in that second half against Georgia. You know, but that's a half, and still, you know, you look at them overall, they're still searching for what you would define as a great win. Um, and I'm waiting to get to that before maybe I bump Florida up a bit in my rankings. So,
Okay, number 10, Georgia, which the computers don't love Georgia. We've watched Georgia play. Georgia does have a bit of an identity. We've talked about the good job Mike White has done, and Georgia's looked like a really solid basketball team. This is not the automatic win that the Bulldogs were last year. Mike White has made this team much, much better. See, 93 in Ken Palm as of Monday morning after 219 in Ken Palm to finish last season.
yep, I had Georgia at 9 in mine. I assume the team I had them ahead of will be next in our rankings, but I am confident enough in Georgia now to push them that high because if you look at their full body of work, right outside of a 14-point loss against UAB, which you know UAB is not bad. let's point that out too. They're another team, been right there in the 4 losses. They've had their chances. You know, felt like they had a chance to win that game, certainly against Georgia Tech. Did some good things, I thought, you know, to kind of maybe build a little confidence in that game against Wake Forest early in the season. And now, as we said, they were up double digits against Florida. I think you just ran into a Florida team that just made more plays, and give Florida credit for that. I said coming out of it, I'm very high on Georgia right now. I'm not high enough to the point to where I think they're gonna, you know, crash the party and maybe get to the tournament. But I mean, they're a very interesting team and very interesting schedule coming up. They got Mississippi State at home, at Ole Miss, at Kentucky, home against Vanderbilt. Their next 4 games. That will tell us a lot about Georgia because I think there's a decent chance they can go 3-1 there. And if they do, then I think you really start to say, okay, we feel like maybe we can trust Georgia a lot more than we thought. Right now, 1-1 in the league. They beat Auburn at home, but I'm ready to sort of look at Georgia and feel like, okay, they've got way more upside than we thought. And like I said, I'd even go as far as putting them ahead of several of these other teams we mentioned. So.
Okay, biggest difference of opinion on this next one. I had A&M 3 spots higher than you did. Where it settles is we've got A&M 9, and I'll tell you why. That's a little bit of recency bias on my part. That's also a little bit of Buzz Williams has done this before, where they're not all that hot in the non-conference, and then whatever happens, they get to conference play and flip a switch. But the Aggies are 2-0, beat LSU by 13 points this weekend, and on the whole, check in at number 9 in our countdown. I think this team is going to be moving up, though.
Well, it's important that you said on the whole, because let's remember that. I know they beat LSU, and we haven't mentioned LSU yet, but on the whole, LSU still has a better overall, I think, sort of picture of the team itself. But you do have to factor in the recency part of it. And you did have A&M higher than me, but I think maybe that's kind of in the back of my mind. You can't discount the fact that they go to Florida and win. They beat LSU at home completely. And what have we talked about? We said it in the last couple of videos. There is a decent chance that A&M can be 5-0 in the SEC. And if they are, they will keep moving up in our rankings as long as they avoid an 8-game losing streak after starting 4-0 last year in the SEC. As long as they avoid that, which I think they will, you know, those are the kind of things that you start to push yourself forward because we had A&M so low at one point. You can't just jump them up based off of one win here or there, you know, ahead of other teams. Like we said, it's a full body of work type thing. And yeah, I mean, they're getting there. And I think starting 2-0, if they beat Missouri on Wednesday, my power rankings next week, they'll take a big jump up. So
yeah, every computer that I look at Pomeroy, Bartorvik, Sagarin, and ESPN's BPI. Everyone has got A&M higher than LSU. I looked at strength of schedule. Ken Pomeroy has got – neither of these teams have been known for strength of schedule. He's got LSU at 253 and A&M at 168, which honestly was higher than I thought it would be. But anyway, just some other numbers in case you wondered. Okay, LSU again at 8, tied with Mississippi. Actually, Mississippi State, if he used the highest vote as a tiebreaker, comes in ahead of LSU. So that would be State at 7, LSU at 8.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I know people will push back on LSU a little bit, but we all know I've been the high man on them this season. And yes, they did just lose 2 straight games on the road at Rupp by 3 and didn't play well at A&M. So I get it. If you want to have the argument, that's perfectly fine with that. But I still was not ready to move them down just yet because, again, they lose by a single possession against Kansas State, lose by a single possession at Kentucky. Certainly didn't play well against A&M, so that's why LSU is starting to slide. But wasn't ready just to completely abandon the fact that they beat Arkansas at home, which I know Arkansas is starting to slide a bit, but you still have to counter, you have to factor that win in somewhere. So, yeah, I mean, it all kind of, I suppose, evens out there. Mississippi State, they're just going to keep going in the opposite direction, I think, unfortunately, because
The schedule, I'm starting to wonder if what they did. Well, I mean, you say that they beat Marquette and Utah, which you almost
Right.
forget because the rest of the schedule was so bad.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is you just have to you can't forget about those 2 games because, like, even a Minnesota game, right? I mean, normal circumstances, you would think a Big Ten team wouldn't kind of be at the level Minnesota is, but they are, and so that win really didn't do a whole lot either. So, yeah, I mean, Mississippi State, like I said, they're just offensively. I mean, the free throws we've talked about. I just think that there's going to come a point, kind of like we saw in the Tennessee game, where everything just falls apart. Um, Alabama game just put too much pressure on your defense to be perfect, and I think they're going to run into that with some of these teams. Now they won't run into with everybody because guess what? There's not a lot of great offensive teams in the SEC as we talked about. So
Nope.
interesting. The stretch coming up though, we talked about it before: Georgia, Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, Alabama. Road games against Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, and there and Tennessee at home. It's just that's tough anyway. So because we saw what happened last time, right? So yeah, they'll love the schedule for Mississippi State, and I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of continue to slide here.
All right, I want to ask you something. This is a good point to ask this question because the next team in the countdown is right there in the net near Mississippi State. That's Kentucky. Kentucky at 44 in the net. That doesn't factor in Sunday's results. I don't know if the Big Ten's activity changed that a little bit. Mississippi State 40 in the net. If we pick the tournament today, Blake, are these teams getting in?
Kentucky and Mississippi State?
Correct.
Mississippi State would have a better shot than Kentucky.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, it's true, though,
I'm
right?
not sure Kentucky's in if they pick the field today.
I don't know.
I don't know why they would be.
Could
They
you
haven't beaten
possibly? How
anybody.
could you support putting Kentucky in today? Like, I don't even think it's a question. Like,
well, look, if you were on the committee and you like the predictive commuters, and I think this is nonsense. Okay, Pomeroy's got Kentucky at 25. He's still got preseason bias baked. You're shaking your head already, and I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just telling you, if you're trying to pull something out of the air to get Kentucky in the tournament, 25 in Pomeroy, 18 in BPI. What is wrong with BPI?
Maybe not pulling it out of the air, pulling it out of somewhere
36
else.
in Sagarin. Right. 57 in Bart Torvik, who seems to do less preseason bias than anybody. And again, 44 in the net. But I mean, Kentucky's best win is Michigan, which I don't think
Kentucky would
getting
get
in the
in
tournament either,
based on their strength of schedule, which is not perfect. But the fact is, I always say this every year: if you play good teams and lose to them, the computers will love you for it. They'll love you if you just play good teams, no matter whether you win or not. If you just play good teams, they'll love you. And this is a case of all of Kentucky's losses have come against good teams. And I mean, okay, great. I mean, look, I'm looking up Lenardi, and we're not going to go through this conversation again. I realize Lenardi is not as accurate as a lot of other people, but we're just pulling this up.
He had him at 10 on Friday, didn't he?
He had him at 7 on Friday.
And, okay. No, the Athletic had Kentucky at 10. I'm sorry. That's who it was.
He had him at 7, had Auburn as one of the last 4 buys, had Mississippi State in the last 4 in, had LSU in the next 4 out. Well, LSU's moved out of there. Mississippi State, I guess, would stay in. Auburn's fine. But I don't know how I could possibly, unless you're just, again, you're predicting the future right now because you don't have the full season. So we're basically talking about a completely meaningless task here because you wouldn't be predicting ahead if you were doing this at the end of the season. But right now, for predicting ahead, which I think is what he's doing, uh, if that's what you're using, then maybe you can put Kentucky in the tournament. But if you're doing it based
Well,
on what we've
there
seen to
was
this
the win over
point,
Louisville.
you just wanted me to shake my head again and roll my eyes.
I just wanted to see if you were listening.
Unbelievable. So look, would they get in? I don't know. Would they be in right now? They'd be on the line, I suppose. But if I'm picking the field, here's the thing though. Let me say this. I say that if I'm picking the field, I'm looking around at a lot of other teams. I'm like, whew, I don't know about
Yeah.
them either. So
It's a bubble for a reason.
yeah,
Well, the
but we're
thing
going to
is,
expand
we
the
still
tournament.
haven't had
Expand the
a
tournament to
big
90.
sample. Well, no, I don't think they'll do that.
Are you kidding
I really
me? I
don't.
think they're absolutely going to do that because there's a lot of money at stake. And if you're, it's absolutely going to go to that point. There's no doubt in my mind it's going to get to
I
90.
disagree. I think it's
No
good.
doubt in my
I
mind.
mean, I've heard. I think.
Not saying it's
Man, I
happening
read up
next
on
year.
this a little bit. I think Gary Parrish agreed with me. I think I could be making this. I could have sworn it was his pod I was listening to last week where he didn't think they would move up. I mean, I don't think that the people. Maybe it was Matt Norlander that said it, but the gut instinct is that a lot of the people who really are the movers and shakers don't want to do it.
And Greg Sankey
And I
says
hope
it,
that's right.
it happens. So,
Okay.
just saying. Greg Sankey's one of the people that's talked about this, and Greg Sankey is the SEC commissioner, has a lot of pull. So,
If they expand to 90 or whatever, the bag of shame goes to the people who make that decision. Because in fact, I would go back to 64. I would. I don't like 68.
I'm actually okay with 68, but 90. It's going to happen eventually. I don't know how soon that'll be. I just think there's too
If you're
much
gonna do
money.
68, match up the 16 seeds. Don't put a team that's earning 11 or whatever playing an extra game than a team that's a 16 or a 15 that doesn't have to do that.
We're going to go down a rabbit hole here. I'm going to make this quick, but if you're going to expand the tournament, my only rule with that is every single regular season champion has to be in. Don't care what. If you're going to here, let me just ask that real quick. How silly is it that we can justify not putting a regular season champion into a tournament based on what they do over a 20-ish game stretch versus what they do over a 2 or 3 game stretch in a smaller
How
tournament?
much fun would a 64 team NCAA
Makes no
tournament
sense.
with conference champion? Well, of course we know why it's TV, and the
Yes,
conference
exactly.
tournaments are fun to watch.
Of
But
course.
yeah,
I'm just saying. I just think it's silly, and you can say, well, it makes the conference tournaments meaningless. Yes, that's exactly why they don't do it. But it makes the
no, you're
regular
right.
season very important. So
If they're going to do that, they do need to include regular season champions.
yeah. Anyways,
Because
all right.
if we get to 90, we're putting. Yeah, okay, we're going down a wormhole.
Kentucky,
All right, we had a tie
as
in
of right
points.
now, I don't think should be an NCAA tournament team. But if you're using predictive measures, I completely understand why they would be in some people's eyes. There you go.
Yeah. All right, we had a tie coming up next, but I broke the tie again with highest vote received. That leaves Missouri at 5 in our countdown, with
Oh, are
Auburn
you
and
kidding
Arkansas
me?
tied at 3.
Oh, what are you doing, man?
If we didn't break the tie, there would just be a 3-way tie at 3rd.
Hang on a second. I gotta make a call real quick. I gotta let some people know you got Missouri at 5.
Hey, you could have put Missouri 3rd on your ballot and solved this problem.
That's true. I put them at 4 though. I put Auburn
But you
ahead of
put
them.
Auburn at 4, and I disagree with that right now.
Well, that's fine. Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that, but yeah, this is like we said. This
You're
is where
trying to
things
sabotage sandbag expectations for your client, aren't you?
I absolutely am, and that's
That's what
exactly
you're
why
doing.
I have ranked Missouri lower every week because I'm just trying to keep people off the bandwagon here. It's getting a little crowded. But yeah, I mean, look, they didn't play perfect against Vanderbilt, but as I said before, I think that was a lot more about Vanderbilt because I thought they did some good things. And still to this point, right? Missouri's got 2 losses, blown out by Kansas, but have completely turned it around since then. Lost that tough game at Arkansas, but I mean, the blowout against Kentucky may have been a sign of things to come for the Cats. But I think this is a very interesting spot this week for Missouri because back-to-back road games for the first time this season, and you're at A&M, at Florida, 2 teams that have recently built up a little momentum here with their wins this on Saturday, and then you got to come home and play Arkansas and Alabama. So, very interesting stretch here for the Tigers, and I think you could argue this may be the most important kind of stretch of the season outside of what they've already gotten to at this point, right? And outside of these last 5 games, or maybe the 5 games before the Vanderbilt game where they played Kansas, UCF, Illinois, Kentucky, and Arkansas. But now you kind of look at this stretch in terms of what it could mean for them, in their spots, tournament-wise and all that. I think these are pretty important games because, losses to A&M and Florida on the road, that starts to ding you a little bit. And but I think we'll see. This is, like I said, it's a very interesting week, interesting 2 weeks for the Tigers. So,
All right, before we separate our top 2, a
oh,
word from
sorry,
our
I forgot
sponsor.
to mention real quickly. I didn't say much about Arkansas or Auburn, but yeah, I mean, we've talked about kind of Arkansas limitations right now. Got to play Alabama. We'll see how they do there, and yeah, Auburn. The streaking continues at home, so that's a nice thing to have for Bruce Pearl's group.
Before we get to our top 2, a word from our sponsor, BROTHROW. Betting 11 to win 10 stinks. With BROTHROW, you bet 10 to win 10. You can bet on all 50 states because it's not the house. Bettors have a fair chance at winning. It is the only sports betting platform that doesn't take a cut of every bet. No deposit money needed. No minimum bets. No need to connect your bank account. Bettors pay each other directly. There's a hassle-free sign-up process that gets you in the action in seconds. Go to brothrow.com/SE14. Once you're there, ask to join our private group. We'll let you in. Anyway, help out the folks who help our channel. And if you win a bet, you win a little more money that way too. Okay. It's been Alabama and Tennessee for a while. Let's start with the Vols. Do you know where the Vols are in Ken Palm today?
Dose.
Do you know where they are in Bart Torvik?
1.
2. How about Sagarin?
Taking a guess. Let me guess. Number 2.
What about BPI?
I'm going to suppose it's probably 2.
What about the net?
23.
2. Have you ever seen such a consensus on a team at this point of the season? That's crazy.
Well, that would tell you that unless Alabama's number 1, we got it wrong, doesn't it? So
it does. And look, I like using the computers as a resource. I'm bigger on them than you guys than you are. But we've had Alabama at 1 for a while, and just obliterating Kentucky on your home floor. I think both of us like Alabama better offensively. These are both really good defensive teams, although Tennessee is historically good. I thought about flipping. I might have it wrong, but Alabama, since that Gonzaga win, has been unblemished. Alabama's losses are to UConn and Gonzaga. Those are better than Tennessee's losses, which are to Colorado and at Arizona. I mean, we're splitting hairs. I can't wait to see these 2 teams play because I think it's going to be fascinating, and that'll be in Knoxville, by the way. That could be the thing that decides your SEC championship. It's just where that game is.
Yeah. I think that at this point, I'd be surprised if there's any other conversation we're having the week before the SEC tournament.
There are light years between these 2 teams and the rest of
I think that's
in my mind
the most obvious thing to me at this point, as things stands right now. I think it's those 2, and I don't know that there's a close third right this moment because I just think that they're on a completely different level than everybody else. And for a variety of reasons, like you said, Alabama, look at the offense, but their defense has gotten better. They've got Brandon Miller. They've got more depth than anybody. But we say that Tennessee's depth starting to show with James back in the mix, and the defense, as you mentioned, historically good. Offense is getting better, and combine all those things together, and these 2 teams are legit Final Four type teams. Now, you don't want to start having that conversation. We don't have a bracket, anything like that. But I think they're very clear at this point that these are the teams to beat in the SEC.
Yeah, should be a fun race. We will be predicting games for Tuesday and Wednesday. Best way to catch that, hit that subscribe button. He's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. We're Southeastern 14, and we'll see you again soon.